Every author hopes that their work will spring to life in the imagination of their readers. One local author has seen her work step off the pages and into the real world of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Susan Nipp and her characters Mudgy Moose and Millie Mouse have taken over the area between Tubbs Hill and Independence Point. Susan was raised in Spokane, attending Rogers High School and Whitworth College. She became a school teacher in Oregon, and there in 1977, she and business partner Pam Beal started a company called We Sing.
We Sing started out as bringing traditional music back to life. Children in the early 70s, late 60s were kind of losing out on, the old traditional songs of the Eensy Weensy Spider and She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain. And we said, there are a lot of people not using traditional music anymore. Why don't we start some workshops for parents and have them learn more about traditional music and use it with their children.
Susan has continued her work with We Sing and has moved with her husband to Coeur d'Alene. A few years ago, Susan heard about a children's book from the 1940s called Make Way for Ducklings. It's the true story of a family of ducks that lived in Boston in the 40s. Statues of the duck family have been constructed to commemorate the story.
And I thought, if Boston can do that, can't we do that in Coeur d'Alene? Why don't we have our own statues, our own story? And so then I started thinking about what would be great for Coeur d'Alene, what kind of animals, what kind of story.
Susan is fascinated with the moose population in our region, and she's always loved spending time in downtown Coeur d'Alene. So she brought these elements together for her story.
And then I thought, what kind of animal would be Mudgy's little buddy? And we could have had an elk or a deer, two big ones, and I thought, what about the opposite? What would be fun for an opposite? And then I went, skunk, a little bear cub, and then I went really tiny, and then went down to the little mouse.
Susan wrote the story of Mudgy and Millie and hired her We Sing colleague, Charles Reasoner, to illustrate the book.
I didn't want just a book. I wanted it to be interactive for children so that there would be the literacy side, but also the active side, and kids could really get to be a part of Mudgy and be able to hug him.
Susan wanted to place Mudgy and Millie statues around Coeur d'Alene, so she knew she'd need approval from City Hall.
I went to the mayor first, and she actually was an educator herself in her previous life. And I said, Sandy, what do you honestly think of this whole project? She absolutely loved it.
After many, many meetings, Susan's project was approved by City Council. She enlisted the talents of Terry Lee to create statues based on her book's illustrations. Terry is an internationally known wildlife artist and Coeur d'Alene native. His paintings and sculptures depict large animals in the wild. Creating a cartoon moose and mouse offered him new challenges.
Then at that time I said, okay, I'm going to build a small one. Let me build a little one that's called a maquette. And then we can get an idea how big we want it to be and how much it's going to cost, and then we can go out and search for the money.
So there were a lot of fundraisers, a lot of promotions, a lot of going out and talking to people and explaining the project, and people were so excited about what this would do for children that a lot of people got on board right away and made donations.
I had to build a foam body and then carve that foam body, because if it was all clay it would be too heavy and probably wouldn't support itself. So I built this foam armature and carved it, and then I applied the clay to the outside of that. And every step of the way, Susan Nipp is the art director, and she would come in and say, yes, I like that, or no, I don't like that.
And I'd say, Terry, the eyes are a quarter inch too far apart. Can you bring the eyes in just a little bit? And he was just so patient with me and so good.
It was important to get her concept, and my whole goal was to do what she thought was important for her story.
Terry's foam and clay pieces were sent to a foundry and used in creating bronze statues. The finished statues were unveiled during a grand celebration on September 13, 2008. Idaho Governor Butch Otter had visited Coeur d'Alene and proclaimed September 13th as Mudgy and Millie Day. In Susan's book, the two characters make stops in 5 locations in Coeur d'Alene. In the real world, each location has a bronze Mudgy and Millie statue.
I heard words that I've never heard before about my work. Oh, he's so cute. he's cuddly, oh, he's adorable. Those are words I have never heard about my work. Usually I've got a big grizzly bear and a big moose or, you know, something like that. But adorable, no, that was not a word that I was familiar with. But it's been a lot of fun because he is adorable.
I had decided all along this was not going to be a project about me. I wanted it to give back to the community, so any money that would come from royalties or any money that would go to the Coeur d'Alene Public Library Foundation. I originally thought, well, this would be a nice project for children and for families, but busloads of kids come now on field trips and they're using it in their classrooms, which was beyond what I imagined would happen. And I have little children come up and say, oh, it's my favorite book, I just want to read it all the time, when are you going to write more? So I've been thrilled at the kids' interaction and more with literacy, because they're just reading all the time and they're so excited about knowing and loving Mudgy.
If you have an idea for Northwest Profiles, send it to KSPS TV, 3911 South Regal, Spokane, Washington 99223. Northwest Profiles is a presentation of KSPS Public Television.